Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's show. It's been a long time in coming. In fact, I'm filming it in April, and you won't see this until the 1st of September, first week in September, because we've got content scheduled out that far. And that's going to be a little bit late for the Core Ultra processors and the ASRock board that I'm using, but we need to talk about that. The reason we haven't really done anything in this space with the new machine is we've had terrible audio echoing in here, and I have to post after I shoot, process it, put it back, and then stitch it all together. And that's a lot of work, especially for a long video. And this may go 60 minutes, and that's not to scare you. But when I look at what we have out there for content for overclocking, people aren't very helpful. Partially, I guess, because they're scared. There's so much difference in your machine, your cooling solution, your hardware, your processor, everything from the main board itself, how it controls the currents and voltages, to the whole thing, the power supply, everything, the time of day you do it, the weather that you're in, all of that good stuff has an effect on it. And we just had a bad bout with two of the processors, two generations, and the AMD boys were jumping all over it. That Intel is all terrible, and it seems to be tracking mostly to some motherboard, main board. I can't say mother anymore. The birthing person board manufacturers, their BIOS settings were by default shipped, cranked way up into that kind of caveat emptor. And people ended up stressing out their silicone, dying out, and everybody was mad. And it is what it is. So to further prove the point of what time this is of the year, because it's going to be a little more difficult to show you all of this stuff because of the schedule is full, I am running this version right here, 2.22. You will see that in the many of the updates in the top left-hand corner of the ASRock board. It was released 20/25/3/21. We're in April, toward the tail end of April, and it's running the latest version that's available to me of the microcode, the 0117. We did have a problem when we first fired this up, as you may know if you're a familiar watcher. 114 microcode, I think, torqued out the processor. It was a problem. We had some discussion. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think I'm an idiot, but anyway, we had a processor die. It wasn't the board. I've got the same board. We had some trouble getting a decent board from Amazon shipped to us, that the socket wasn't damaged. That's old news. We don't have 0115 either. I don't know if there was one. It just isn't there, but we are on 0117 as of today. So the very first thing I want to talk about after we roll credits is some of the misconceptions about what undervolting does, because we go look at the main board settings and we look at the actual things we can tweak, and we look at XTU, and we take from XTU and push it back into the BIOS and run a few things and tweak a little bit. So it just runs long, and I apologize for you. But yeah, we're going to try to answer some questions that I couldn't find when I went to look for them. And it's caveat emptor. Watch if you want to, don't watch if you don't want to. It's no skin off my nose, but I'm just trying to help because information is sketchy and it's a little bit here and there. Remember, this is a different board probably than what you're using, a different chip than what you're doing. And of course, you could burn yours up if you abuse it. And we're going to talk about that right on the other side of the title. Now, the first section of the screen capturing bit that we're going to do is actually dealing with answering what does the undervolting do. So I probably won't talk too much about this, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about the silicone and the understanding that I have as an engineer. And of course, I'm old and I haven't done electronics since 2000. It was the last time I had a class in semiconductors. 2000 is 25, so 25 years ago. Gosh, I'm an old fart. Anyway, the main thing we got to think about is if you're used to an amplifier or something like that, guitar amplifier, anything, it doesn't have to be a two-type, be a voltage control or solid state, doesn't make any difference. We're running between some either 0 point or below 0 point to a positive point, and we're going anywhere in between there. Well, with digital electronics, we have a desire to shove a transistor into saturation, and we want to pull it back down into depletion, and that's our two states, and we don't like that no man's land in between there. To visualize it, whether it's technically 100% correct today in our current state of affairs is irrelevant to me. I just want you to visualize this. How long does it take you to fill up a swimming pool with a hose pipe? Long flipping time, okay? All right, take that, make that into one of the little kiddie pools. Still a long time, but a lot less time than in a full-size swimming pool. Well, what if we take it down to a 55-gallon bucket, or even a sink full of dishes versus, say, just wetting a sponge? Well, the time it takes to wet a sponge is much, much shorter because it's a lot smaller, and we can dry it out a lot quicker because it never had that much water in the first place. You see what we're doing here? So the smaller our transistors get, the easier it is for us to go to saturation and depletion. Because there's only so many holes for the electrons to go plug up, okay? And that's the transition time we do. So by making our scales on the nanometer scale smaller and smaller, we can get faster. Also, because they're smaller, each individual one, we can get them closer together and get them so that even the little traces that we print in that process. Now, it's not a 3D printer. We don't have a big arm up there going around making a CPU, but there's multi-stages and it's built up, right? It's kind of like mold that builds up on your bread if you leave it out. We're going to start with a substrate of silicon, which is made with like a little key, a little starter seed on it. And then they pull this thing out of its little structure, and we end up with this long tube. And on that long tube, we have lots of spaces to build lots of CPUs or isolated circuits or whatever we want to do with it. We print them all out, so to speak, and we get variations. Some of the difference are a little bit different. They're supposed to be identical, but they're not identical because these things are tiny, tiny, tiny. And so we do get a different version of it with each one of them. And we can get different bin versions. Some of them will run a little bit faster, some a little slower. So what do we get and why do we undervolt? Well, the most reason you see people talk about is because their processor is too flipping hot. So what is in Ohm's law in the high school version, right, or the vocational school version, the one that doesn't use calculus? The algebraic version is P equals IE, right? Power equals current times the voltage. So if we're having, if the power is causing the heat, we want to cut our power down, we want to cut our heat down. We really want to cut the heat down, but we're going to cut the power down to do it. Well, we can sometimes with things called current mirrors and other type of circuitry, we can force current through something because we can do it. But normally the I and E go together. So what happens is we may want to control the voltage to turn that down so we're not as hot. What happens though is as you turn down that voltage, you are increasing the area of uncertainty. Now, if we're having, an oscilloscope, I'm sure you've seen one. It's one of those things in the little scary movies that draws the little lines across it, right? An oscilloscope tracks the voltage transitions over time. It's just a graphing tool, right? Electronic graphing tool. So when our switching is very, very fast compared to our time scale, everything looks almost square from 0 to 1, 0 to 1, or 0 to 100%. Well, as we speed up our size, because it's taking a physical amount of time in the real world to go from 0 to 1, we're starting to ramp over our squares into more of kind of a trapezoidal shape. Well, one at a time as a serial we can push those pretty fast and still catch them. But if we start doing 8, 16, 32 of these suckers plus other signals, we get a little bit different lead and lag on each little line can get in there because it's a physical difference trace on say a main board or even on a circuit inside of a printed circuit, isolated, integrated circuit. They can run at different times, get slightly different. So we start to get to a point where this line is over here and this line is over here and this one's going down and this one's going up. And so we have a definite zone of certainty that we're uncertain. In that time, we are just not sure what it is. We want to lock it in, but we have to get them all switching. So when we start changing how long it takes to fill up that sponge or to dry that sponge out, this one has got a little bit more sunlight and it dries a little quicker. And this one was already a little bit wet or whatever. So they're just kind of not jamming together. So lowering your voltage can cause instability. That's the downside of it. It doesn't make it run faster. It will actually probably make it run slower because it can't keep up with it. And the microcode probably knows this, and so it's pulling off that frequency. What it may do if you're going up against a thermal shutdown or throttling, if you can cut the heat because it was so flipping hot to start with, then if you undervolt it, you may still get some good speed out of it simply because it's idling less, it's throttling less, it's doing more work more uniformly over a period of time. So yeah, you can undervolt and get something to work a little faster, but most of the time it's because you're running up against the silicone limits and it's trying to cut it back. We are going to look at the BIOS with our capturing device. So the first thing I would do is I would say, well, I'm going to use the Intel tuning utility, extreme tuning utility, the XTU. And I do that because it allows me to do my adjustments that I want to do on the fly, so to speak. So I can do it real quick. Once I find out and test it what I want, then I want to translate that into the BIOS so that the BIOS starts it up in that mode. But if I were to make a little change in the BIOS each time and have to restart, it just doesn't work very well. So it's better to hit it with software and translate that to the BIOS. I think that's my thought process. So if you don't have XTU, and again, all this is made together, we have a main board that will overclock with a processor that will overclock with the Intel supporting overclocking software. So everything matches up. Again, no guarantee written or implied with any of this stuff. So we're going to look here, and we're going to look for this little name right here, Intel XTU download. Google will find it for us. Intel Extreme Tuning Utility. Oh, anyway, we have this pulled up. There are two different versions currently available through Intel, and they're going to force you to use the latest one, which I guess makes sense. Now, if you're not a super nerd expert, these versions that sometimes you hear people talk about, 22H2, 23H2, 24H2, they do relate to the version of Windows. This is very obvious to anybody who's done this kind of stuff. And if you're overclocking, hopefully you already know this. But Windows 10, 22H2 was the last version, and I have a couple of machines using that because I don't want to bring it up to the 11 at this time, even though they're going to discontinue later this year. Right now, this is April 25, but later this year they're going to kill off the Windows 10 because too many people like it, and it doesn't have all the AI features that 24H2 of Windows 11 has, which is the latest version. If you look at this bottom one, it's right there. So they're saying this is good for everything up to 23H2 in Windows 11, but with the Windows 11 24H2 new version, they want you to use the latest one. So just download that. I'm not going to show you how to do that. You know how to download and install a program. This is actually from Intel.com. Make sure that you're installing the right stuff and you're responsible for anything you download. If you catch a hairpiece. If you catch computer hairpiece from downloading something that's not really my deal, I'm not responsible for any of that kind of stuff. But anyway, we load XTU up and look at it. Now let's go ahead and bring it up since I have it loaded. I'm going to go ahead. Let me see. Bring it back into screen. Let me find my XTU that I have downloaded. There it is, Intel's Extreme Tuning Utility. We hit yes. It brings up. It has two different modes to it. If I'm going to slide this a little bit this way, I think, so that I can still play on screen with you a little bit. Now, let's talk about the compact view. This is probably the easiest thing in the world to do. It has a one-click button. You hit this button, and Intel goes out, and it figures out what your best little deal is going to be. So you could do this power and current limits, or you could do the automatic overclock up here, and you can get a good results. Now we do have this yellow little lightning bolts that you see right here in your screen. It says undervolt protection is enabled and will prevent voltage from being set below the boot time voltage. Default values can become invalid with undervolt protection enabled. What is this little screen here showing you? Well, the easiest thing to do is just click one of these two choices, overclocking or power, because I think power comes with overclocking, but maybe you want to leave your clock fine. I think you can do power by itself. This tells me what apparently the default values are for this chip. I haven't messed with it. We do have the undervolt here. So you can undervolt, but it can be a problem of itself. And if you're not running too hot, if you're not overloading the thing, I wouldn't undervolt it, because it's not going to buy me anything. It's just potentially adding issues. But we might if we have a hot core. In the past, I've looked at, it looks like the 22nd core on E-core does run hot for some reason. And we might want to drop that down. But we'll talk about the architecture to go with this in just a second. So we have to take away that little yellow thing if we want to consider doing some undervolting. And we have to go into the BIOS to do it. Well, let's look real quickly before we get there, because pretty soon, well, I can do that later. I'll do that later. Let's just take care of the undervolting first. All right. So at this stage, we've gone out on the internet. We got our XTU. We put it on there. We haven't done anything with it. Let's run a benchmark stock right now and see what we get. And remember, you can run benchmarks over and over and come up with different things. Now, this is saying it's running in the orange at 236 watts. Okay. The temperature is fine at 30, look at 36 degrees. The package temperature is 36 degrees. So it's not too hot. Okay. That's the stock. That's our benchmark we're starting with. Now I want to go ahead and make this little lightning bolt go away. Let's look at the advanced view, because we'll see some more lightning bolts. Okay. This is our current configuration. We want to look at that, but we want to look at advanced tuning first. Now, with advanced tuning, you see we got some more lightning bolts. We can't undervolt any of this stuff. It's not going to let us. It gives us that same message. You have to turn it off in the BIOS to do this. But this is our sort of the expert one. The other one is the one click. If you want to drill down and get a little bit more advanced, you can do the per cores. Here we have 1 and 6 are our high cores, and then the rest of the P cores are in fact down at 55. Now, if we look at efficient cores, they're all a block of these, but let's talk about something real quick. Now, this is the current layout for my processor, my i9 Core Ultra. And we see how they've laid it out on the die. And I actually like this, because what it does is it puts our power cores, or their performance cores, they like to call them. I think of them as power versus efficient, but they're performance cores. And you see they're arranged around so that they're spread out a little bit. And I think that may help take the heat dissipation off of the CPU, off of the IHS pretty well. You also see that the efficiency cores are grouped together kind of in little farms or groups or whatever you want to call them. Here's an example. The E cores right on this side. Am I seeing my mouse? Yes, it is, but it's not looking real good on my little screen above it. But I have a big arrow, and this little group of E cores, there are 4 together. Then they have their level 2 cache before their shared level 3 cache, right before we go out to the bus. So this portion is the shared level 3. The gray right here is the shared for these 4, and these have a shared for these 4, and these 4 have their share, and these 4 and their share, and you see what we're doing. P cores are independent. The reason I bring that up is when we look at this, if I want to change, like say this core is running hot on it, and I want to change something specific to that, maybe I want to boost it up. All right, well, if I boost it up 5, it boosts that whole group up because of the architecture. I'm going to discard that. And when we look at the performance cores, we can do them individually. if we wanted to bump that up, we could bump up just that one core. I'm not going to do that for this, but you get the idea. The architecture is structured a little bit different. Now in the processor, we can also change our power limits. Right now they're set at the default, and we can bump these up using this area right here. Our cache, we can change our cache ratio from 38. We can bump it up to till it crashes. But we still got more of these pesky little gold. You can't undervolt anything. We're not going to do anything with graphics because we're running the 4070 Super over there. So that gives you kind of a little bit of an idea. Let me go back to my compact view. That gives us kind of an idea of, we can do the quick and easy that we know that's fine. We just click the automatic overclock button and it takes care of everything for us. We've done a benchmark. Now we want to go, because maybe we want to see just how we make this thing undervolt in case we do have a hot core. Well, that's going to require us to restart. Now, what do you say we get to it? You're going to lose my pretty face when we come back because we're only going to be on the BIOS capture. All right, we're just going into our BIOS with our F2. This is an ASRock board. It uses F2 to get in there. So it's going to come up. This is our screen that we're faced with. What we want to do is go over to the OC tweaker. Okay. The mouse is a little funny in the BIOS settings because it's not running anything. It's not running the software. All right, so we click on the OC tweaker, CPU configuration. Yours will vary. And what we're looking for is we're looking for the thing that says under voltage protection. And there we have it, undervolt protection. Click on that. See, the clicking is not quite as fast because the speed of the mouse using the driver software. All right, we're descaled is what it is. Now right here, we have our undervolt protection. This is our gold little lightning bolt. When the undervolt protection is enabled, user will not be able to program undervoltage in operating system runtime, which is our gold lightning bolt. We can't do it because it's enabled, right? Enabled and right here. Now it says recommended to keep it enabled by default. Okay, that's fine. Now here I think is a mistake in the English. Enabled, allow BIOS undervolting, but enable undervolting protection in runtime. So I think they're trying to say, if it's enabled, you can undervolt it by setting it manually in the startup BIOS, but you will not be able to do it with XTU. I think that's what they're trying to say here. Then the other one says undervolt protection in runtime. Disabled, no undervolt protection in runtime. So, yeah, you wouldn't have the undervolt protection, but you can undervolt, if that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and disable this. And we might find that we have a surprise coming to us. What do you bet? We go ahead and hit exit. Again, this mouse, the gaming mouse, is hypersensitive. All right. Well, we've rebooted right after turning our undervolting protection off to make our little gold lightning bolts disappear so that we can, at least demonstrate undervolting. We may not need to do it on my system, but you might want to, depending on how your cooling system works, your solution. Let's bring this up. All right. Extreme tuning utility. Oh no. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Or as Gomer Pyle would say, surprise, surprise, surprise. All right. We got something pulled us up. Unable to start. Why are you unable to start? It says XTU documentation, consult this. Okay, but right above it is our little thing. We got VBS. And that's not Vacation Bible School. It's the core isolation of memory. Now, if you remember, and you may not, I don't know if you care, but right after AMD had released one of their sets of processors, and they were saying how great it was, and it turns out the reviewers called bull stuff on it because it was not working like they said it would. And they said, oh, no, we're using 24H2, and we're also using with the core isolation off, because that can make it run a lot better, because it was actually kind of slower, the same processor running Windows 11 than it was, but 24H2 hadn't been released yet. So it was just kind of a kerfuffle of confusion. All right, so we've got to go do turn our core isolation off. Why it ran before, I don't know, but it's having a hiccup. So we're going to come down here and we're going to type in core isolation. We're going to turn that off. Right here it is, memory integrity. That's what they call it, the VBS. Virtualization based security. That's what the VBS stands for right there, if you see it. We're going to turn it off. It's going to say Windows security. Yes, we got to agree twice, and we have to then restart, and we'll see you on the other side. Well, we managed to start back up after all. All right, so we're back up. Let's bring up our XTU and see if it will actually run. Now that we've turned our undervolt protection off in the BIOS, now we've had to restart, and we have to undo the virtualization based security or core isolation. That was a surprise. We've got it fixed. This time when we bring this up, we should not see any of the gold lightning bolts through the system, and we'll do a quick tour of it just to prove that, and then we'll run a benchmark because we haven't really done anything. Well, we've got it off of the simplified version, I think is what we call this. If we go to the advanced view, all right, we don't seem to have to see advanced tuning. I want to do performance cores. Yes, you don't see those three that we had right here. These are missing. And in efficiency cores, we have them just kind of like they were before. I think it didn't let us do an undervolt on any of these cores either. The processor, we had some limitations up here that are now turned off. The cache, we had 2 of those, I think it was. And of course, graphics had something, but we're not messing with it because I'm not using internal graphics at this time. So we are certainly back where we started without, of course, our yellow lightning bolts. So let's run a benchmark and see if we've gotten any different results, not having changed any clocks or anything, but just simply turning off core isolation or VBS. Let's give it a try. And these do randomly hit different numbers from time to time anyway, so it's not, you might have to like run it 10 times to get an average to really have a concept of what's going on. Package temperatures 34 degrees, 35 degrees is not hot. We're running at idle 21 watts. It's not bad. Well, we're still running in the orange. We're not hitting red, but we're in the orange, and 72 degrees is certainly not hot. Let's see, what did we have before? The previous run with the undervolting protection on, not that we changed anything, and the core isolation on, we hit 14 to 40. So now we hit 14,696. That's with core isolation off. All right, so that's probably getting a little bit into those claims when AMD was saying, yes, we're super fast and we're faster than Intel. Here's our results. But then the people out doing the reviews didn't have 24H2, the speed customizer. This is something, another place where we can hit that one button. But what I want to do this for, the reason I'm showing you this, we stretch her down, is this is our setup that we're going to come back to this screen later on, and we want to look at this stuff, okay? We want to see what we are set. When we finish fiddle farting around with our system, getting it where we think we like it, we want to take these notes down because this is what we're going to use to go to our BIOS to fix this. So this is the startup every time. Well, we've got active performance core. If we just have one, I want you to read this to make sure you understand what's going on. I haven't had anybody explain this on the internet. They haven't taken the time because everybody wants a 5-minute video. If you have one active performance core it will let that core run at 57. If you have 2 active cores, it will let the second one also. So you'll have 2 of them running at 57, which may be good for games that tend to be kind of single thread. Then if you have a third active core comes in, they're going to go to 54. 4 active cores, 54, and so on down till we get down. Now the efficiency cores are running at 46. There is a 0 offset here. Normally this has been dynamic, but I've been playing around, so that's now just fixed at 0. It normally is going to be a variable. And we have short burst at 250, turbo boost at 250, 375 amps, 0 on the AVX2. We have the process cache ratios at 38. So you see what we got going on. Now, we pull this down a little bit further. Let me just explain this, or tell you what the stars. Remember, we had 2 cores, 2 of the performance cores, the power cores, the faster cores, the bigger cores, right? We had 2 of those that will go faster than the other one. So they're at 57, 57. So a lot of software, when you look at it and it's telling you what your ratios are, your frequencies are, they're going to be kind of looking at all these others. And they may report to you that they're running 55, and you think, gosh, I'm not running as fast as I should. I told them to run a little bit faster. But remember, you're also running multiple cores. So this is the individual ratio per core. Now we also have an efficient cores. They're all done the same way. They're right now set at 46. That's fine. We have a 0 ratio and the offset set right there. So we can get it probably pretty close to this. We have performance cutoff temperatures at 70. When we boost it, they will probably go to 90, which is still below the 110 on the silicone, its limit. So let's go back to the simple version and say we don't want to know anything about it. We just want to see if we can get a little bit faster. So let's hit that overclock button. All right, now knock that P core up to 55, right? We've got this at 4.7. That's your E core, so it bumped both of those up a little bit. And we're still running pretty low wattage, pretty cool. And we have obviously the power turned on, but you see what it did when it boosted it. Intel did this. I didn't do this. Intel did this. It set the turbo boost power to 295, the turbo short power to 295, and the processor current at 400 amps. So it bumped it up a little bit more, bumped all those numbers up just a little bit more. Well, let's run a benchmark to see if we had any improvement in speeds from this automatic overclocking. It finishes up. Notice we're at 264, a little bit warmer, not bad. And we're pretty well much at 14,678, which, if you could see this, turns out to be just under what it was when we turned core isolation off. So it really didn't have that much of an effect so far. Let's go back to the advanced view. Now we have our after. You see it booped it up to 55 from the minimas on the multi-cores when they're active. It did gain us a little bit right there, but it didn't move either one of the 2 cores, the top cores, up any. Moved the wattage as we just talked about right there, and it also moved the efficiency cores up by 1. Okay, 47. So that's what that did. Now, what if we wanted to go in? Let's undo this real quickly. Turn off. There we go. We have to turn it off before it turns our advanced tuning back on. So now we have our advanced tuning. When we run this, we can in fact bump up just the first core here. Bump that up to 57. We can bump it all the way up. I have run it at 58. It's fine at 58. Right? And we can leave those at 55. We apply those. Now we have the same kind of a looking thing at the bottom here. It says, look, if we have 1 active core, run it at 58. Could be either one of those 2 cores. If we have 2 active cores, they're going to run at 57. Right? They're going to be 54 here on down. Well, maybe since I can bump up to 55, I want to take this to 55, this to 55, this to 55, and maybe I want to leave the last three sitting at 54 and apply that. Now let's look at the efficiency cores. They've all gone back down to 46. Well, let's pick one in one row, bump it up to 47, because that's what Intel did. Notice it only moved that entire block right there, that whole neighborhood. We can move this one up same way, 47. We can do it with all of them. But we're going to see something which may have something to do with where it's located on the die. I'm not smart enough to know this. But now we've got all of these ratios turned up. It has something similar. It says if we have one running, we can run it at 47. If we have two running, to 16 of them, they're going to be back down at 46. Okay? So what if we took this one and bumped this up to 2? Now we might let two of them run at 47, 46 at all the rest of them. You could even come in here and add a line and do this, say, to 15. You can back this down to, say, the first 8. So 3 to 8 is running. That would actually be the 9th when we do it like that. 46, we could then knock that down to 45 if for some reason you wanted to know that your cooling solution couldn't handle all of the cores running. You would actually knock down the ratios. It would throttle it back down. Is what that does right there. Okay, so I'm not going to do this. I'm going to bump that back up to 16 and leave them at 46 and apply that. Now, if we wanted to undervolt, because in previous runs I have seen this one for some reason soak out and get a little hot. It may not be pasted quite perfectly, or there may be error underneath the silicone, or a little tiny air bubble right above that core. But we could, of course, come up here and offset the voltage, but it's going to do it for that whole bank, that whole neighborhood of 4. We can knock it down. Now, normally we would knock it down one little increment at a time to see if it was stable, because it's a pain in the butt when this thing locks up and has to restart and it gives you a little error message. But you can adjust that voltage up or down as necessary. Now, one thing I noticed with this processor, so right now we have this voltage override. It is set at 1.148. This row is set up, this group at 1.148. The 8th and 16th, the last 8, are up a little higher. Don't know why these two are. And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know which set these are. These may be the opposite ends of the die. Maybe it's this one and this one that runs that hot, and they're just deciding they're going to do that. Maybe it has something to do with how the cache works. I don't know, but I did notice, for whatever reason, with this microcode and everything set up, it's defaulting, whatever it's doing, the top 16 run at a little lower boost rate than the boost voltage there at the voltage override. So there we go. We have our timeline at the bottom. It's not doing anything particularly exciting at this moment. We can watch down here for our total was a TDP is the design power. We have it set at 18, 21, whatever it's bouncing to. We may watch to see this is power throttle limit. This is going to bounce up at that 295, what we're sitting at. It could also go against that 400 amps on the current right there. So we also can go up to our processor and change the cache speed, because we're manual now. We can put it at 40 like we saw it, right? We might undervolt the cache if we're worried about that, because now we have that turned off. We go to the processing. This is where we would adjust our power up to match what our one-click boost did. We would just slide this up, and you can go on to an infinite amount of power there. We had it set by Intel at 295. Long was at 290. Let me zoom up a little bit to. We also saw that it bumped the the current on the ICC up to 400. So we're going to do that as well. Knock that down to no more than what the one button boost did to it. So we're just now at this point setting it the way manually, the way that the one button boost did. Now let's go back and do a bench mark. Now we've done this. We've done exactly what the one button click did. We've done it manually. Let's see how it works. See, because we changed that number, this is no longer in the orangey right there, is it? And it turns out to be 14,510. So we're still bouncing about where we were before. What do you say we run a second time and we'll come up with a different number? Maybe it'll be higher this next time. Yep, 14,647. That is higher than it was before, but not as high as it was after we just hit the bump. So it depends on when you hit this. Who knows why it's different. Now, what if we wanted to, let me go back to my advanced view. I want to undo all of this stuff. And we should do that by rebooting the machine because nothing has been saved permanently. If we successfully restart the machine, we should be able to go back and look, and we should go back to that first set of numbers. We'll find out. Okay, we just restarted one more time. Let's see if we have any errors with the XTU. Bring that up. Let's go back and look at our speed optimizer, and you see how we did. We've reset back to our beginnings. See our 250 and our 375 and our 54s, 46 instead of our 47. So we've just, it didn't take, it held, it ran while we had XTU running, but we didn't make the settings permanent when it ran. So it didn't crash. Everything was okay. But we didn't keep those numbers. And the reason I wanted to do this is we're fixing to go in there and look at the BIOS, tweak some BIOS, and see what the ASRock Stage 1, Stage 2 gaming presets. You see, this is 5757. All right, let's go back into the BIOS and see what the BIOS gaming presets do to see if we're apt to maybe cause the same problem that we had before. Now, the microcode may protect the processor better on the Arrow Lake than it did the previous two generations, the Revisited and the 13th. So let's go ahead and if you like this content, please go to calldelltosell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you. Thank you. Better on the Arrow Lake than it did the previous two generations, the Revisited and the 13th. So let's go ahead and restart that, and we'll find out what exactly the BIOS is doing with those gaming modes. We'll take a pic of it because we'll use the software to read the current. All righty, here we're back up into the BIOS, and we got our little hyper DPI gaming mouse that's hard to control, like a drunk man on ice. So we're going to look at this now. Right here we have the, well, first let's look at the power version. You can do the extreme mode, which is going to crank up the power, obviously, and we have the gaming off overclocking, because remember we got two things. We can change the power, we can change the ratios. So if we were to set the ASRock extreme mode, it's probably going to max it out. We can do that. But let's look at the overclock preset. Let's put it at stage 1 because they want to make this where it is super easy for you to work. But remember, it was ASUS who took a lot of heat because they were shipping them apparently with these power modes and things hit for the maximum performance. And after a year or so, they eventually just kind of burned out the silicone. So let's restart and go load XTU one more time and see what it does just by picking that stage 1 overclock mode. Yes, look at everything it's telling us it changed. It tells us it changed those 2 top cores, 1 and 6 to 58, and the rest of them to 55. So it's going to change this ratio, but what's it doing for the power? Probably not much. And here we are back up and running. Let's look at, speed optimizer was where we were looking at these. 58, just like I said, just like we saw in the BIOS, but it didn't change the power. So we just put it at stage 1. We changed the ratios, right? Let's go see what we do when we put it into stage 2. All right, brought the BIOS back up. We've restarted. We got our freaky mouse. We're going to go back to our gaming preset offset. This is the BIOS setting. We're going to make this into stage 2. We're going to hit save and exit, and we're going to go back in and look, and we'll see what it does. It says it changes the voltage from auto to 1.4, standard fixed voltage. Takes the CPU D to D ratio to 34. NGU max overclock ratio to 34. It's just fixing it's what it's doing, taking the autos off. Stage 2 gaming preset, and it's just telling you the name of it right there. So let's go see. Alrighty. We hit stage 2. Let's go look at our speed optimizer and see if we see anything. We haven't changed our power or our current right here. We're just working with our little ratios. We did change some voltages, which should have gone to fixed mode instead of the variable. All right. We're looking through. We still have a 70-degree limit on our cutoff temperature, so we're not hitting the heat too much. We're leaving that. Looks like it'd be a pretty safe bet just to go to stage 1, stage 2. Okay, what we're going to do, stage 2, if you remember, did a fixed voltage instead of being auto, and we're going to go ahead and restart and now flip the power mode to ASRock power mode. Back up again with our freaky mouse. All right, now we're at stage 2. You see what we are with the power delivery Intel default. Let's move it to ASRock Extreme, and we'll see what it does to our wattage. Restart. Once again, see you on the other side of the restart. All right, let's restart XTU and see what has changed. And right there it is. The current, let me pull it up a little bit. The processor current is now unlimited. We're still at the watt limits, but we've moved the processor core to ICC max. We'll have to go back at the previous setting and verify that that was set at a lower level. By default, it was at 375. The one-click boost bumped it to 400. It looks like the BIOS moves it to, you got it, unlimited. All right, what do you say we restart, click our one-click button and update everything, see how things are, take our notes, and go translate that to the BIOS, because this video is plenty long as it sits. Let's go. Alrighty. We're back up into the BIOS and we're going to turn all of this stuff off that we just turned on, put it back to Intel default mode. We're going to take this off of gaming preset to disabled. Come on, there we go. The clicker doesn't click too good in the BIOS. Oh, let me show you one other thing we're not going to play with, but I'll show you. They do have a voltage mode on the voltage configurator. We can turn this off of stable mode to overclock mode. And if we do that, we're going to look down in the bottom corner. It says overclock has a larger range voltage for overclocking, stable, smaller range of voltage for a stable system. Well, I think I'm going to put that back where it's not red. What do you think? All right, because we're not messing with that. I'm not going to mess with it on my system. All right, we should be back, I think, where we were before at our defaults, right? 57 and 57, 54s. We got our 46 back, our 250 watts, and our 375 amps, 38 on our cache ratio. Let me bring this up. Core offset voltage is no longer set to fixed. We've got a ratio still stays at 0 and nothing changed. That 38 right there, the 55s, and so on down, the efficiency core ratios, and so on and so on. So we're maxing out at 57 on those two cores like we did before. So we're just really back where we started from. Now, what we want to do is we're going to hit that approved Intel one-click overclocker button. See, we're back at 70 degrees C limit. So should we take a chance and run it one more time to get that baseline benchmark before we go? Probably should. Let's go ahead and put that in the compact view just because we like the way it looks, and let's run it and we'll compare it to the previous base. 14,171. The first time we ran it at its base, it was at 14,240. So it's down on the low 1400. So let's go ahead and hit the automatic overclock. And that's going to do the power limits and everything. Now let's go back to the advanced view. Look what Intel did to us. All right, because we're going to take these things down. 57, 57, 55, 0 offset voltage goes to fixed, right? No boost, no under. It brought the amperage up to 400, 295, 295, 40 on the ratio. And we're going to take our notes down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the BIOS and we're going to make these changes, right? And it did bump it to 90 degrees C. And we disabled it for the temperature offset. So we're just going to duplicate this over in the BIOS, with the exception that we did like the 58s in the two places. We're going to fix those manually. Worst thing that happens is if we run a single core and nothing else is running in the system, that it might give us a little bit of a boost, maybe not. All right, so we're going to cancel this out, turn this back off. All right, we want to revert it, yes. We'll see you on the restart in the setup. Well, now we should be able to, hopefully I won't have to edit much. We're going to go in here and set this up using our card O data that we just took off of. And how did we get our data? We let XTU tell us what to set the numbers to on our system. So I'm not particularly froggy guy, and I'm not going courting. That's an old people reference. All right, let's go to our overclock tweaker. We're back at default mode and disable the presets. We're going to go down here to CPU configuration. We want to go to CPU P-core ratio. See how it's auto? We're going to change that. Let's go ahead and click it now. And we're going to do per core. Now we could do all core, which we could just flatten them all out, but I don't think that the 55s are going to go to 57 or 58. And per specific core, that's if we were like perhaps having some sort of issue to it. Let's go to per core. All right. Now, which ones were our top of the line? Let's go on down. We're looking at P-core offset ratio. It says it's at auto, right? So we want to take number 1, and it says maximum 57, 57. We're going to put 58 there. And we're going to do the same thing with number 6. That was our other 58 or 57 that we're going to make it. We're going to overclock it at 58. And then we're going to take the 0 through 7s that aren't those two, and we're going to make those 55. Now, one of the things that we can do with the software that we weren't able to, that I don't think we're able to do here. Here we're only doing integer values, but XTU will let you do step sizes or fractions, and we're not doing those. We're just gonna duplicate the even number ratios that Intel suggested. And one last here at this, make that 55. Okay. Now we're going to go back up to, now remember how this works. If we have 1 running, 2 running, 3 running type thing. So we've got this one, if P-core turbo ratio limit 1, right? So if we have turbo ratio limit number 1, we'll make that 58. We'll leave the second one, P-core number 2. We can go ahead and put that at 57 if we want to. We're going to make the rest of them 55s. All right. I believe I want to then come down here to my E-core. Remember we had the X2 ratio. It was set to 0. I'm going to leave that on auto. I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't know that I can put a 0 in there. So we're going to go to E-cores. If it will go, come on. My mouse is giving me trouble. There we go. And we're going to do all core. Now, I did have the next to the last E-core in a previous run. It was a little toastier than the rest of them. So we could come back and change just that one core and set that particular E-core down if we want to. We can do it by per core, or we can do it by all core. So I think since Intel suggested that it was running all at 47, see, we have these right here. Turbo ratio 1 is at 46, 2 at 46, and so on down the run, right? We can make that back into the 47 that we had. So if we have 1 running, we can make that at 47. If we have 2, we run them at 46. Or we can come back to this and just push them all at 47, because that's what it suggested that we do in the output. If you remember, we set them all to 47, but it limited them when they had more than one core running. Now we need to look at our E-cores. Currently they're set for auto. So I want to bring this in here, and I can do all core, which is what the XTU did. It put them all at 47. We could do a per core. So I'm just going to go all core with this, right? And I'm going to put all cores at 47. And we'll go back and see if this is in fact going to be stable. We can go back and stress test this as it sits. We don't have to change anything with XTU to stress test this. So what else do we need to do? I'm thinking about it, and if I think about it, I think I got everything I was looking to do translated back here. We did go to fixed voltage, I think, on the case. Let's go to voltage configuration. See, that's the graphics system agent voltage. It's now flexible. We can take this and put this at fixed mode. Fixed voltage, it did automatically was what, at 1.4? Well, I think I'm looking at my G-Skill memory, and it says the 1.35 volts. Looking at the lookup box, it says I can go to 1.41 on Core Ultras if the memory can handle it. We had something in our little clicker set that to 1.4 volts. I tell you what I'm thinking about doing. Go ahead and put this back to auto and just let the system handle it how it sees fit and be done. We have some more settings we need to do. We did set the OWL core to 47. Let's go on down a little bit at a time. We are looking for our power and our cache ratio, CPU cache ratio. Our system had it set before at 38 standard. We're going to go ahead and put it at 40. So our cache ratio is 40. We could set a minimum at 38 if we want. I just soon let it go automatic, but we could set that down. All right. Not really going to change the graphics or frequency, CPU, D to D ratio, or any of those funny things. We want to go down till we see our power limit. And we want to move those up where Intel's XTU put them. There we go. We were at 250. Let's make that, what was that? 295. 56, the duration was not changed. It doesn't really matter if the long power and the short power are the same limit. It really doesn't matter what the duration is going to be, I don't think. So we're going to make that 295. And before we had a current limit of 375. And when we put it on the ASRock power limit or maximum power, it bumped it to infinite, wasn't it? Didn't it benefit it what some imaginative number? Now we had it in the system itself from Intel saying it was at 400. So I think 400, I don't want to go any more than what Intel kind of one click wonder made it to work. The rest of that stuff I think we're in good shape for. And we ought to be able to reboot the system and see something looks pretty well much like it was before when we hit the one-click boost. Now, we did have one mode in there where we had the system agent voltage set. Something set it to 1.4, and it said you could do that. Look, if we looked it up, it said you could do that as long as it's stable. I don't think we had any voltage problems with it, but I'm going to leave that at automatic and just tried to wrap this particular video up because we've got to do some all right, let's bring our XTU up. All right, we are running. Let's look at our speed optimizer and see what our ratios look like. See if we got them set the way we intended. Yeah, we do have, if we have just one core running, it's going to do 58. Remember, we could make that second one 58 as well. but I don't think we're going to do that. I think we'll leave it at 57. So we got 58, 57, and of course the next one's the third one. Since they're not any higher than 55, we're going to leave them at 55. That's what the one-click wonder did for us. Okay. Active cores, we're at 47. The core voltage offset is multiple. We didn't set that to fixed and 0. We're going to let it do its thing. I guess we can go back in there and operate on it if we want to. 295, 295, 400. That's what XTU set it at. Ratio, we couldn't set it into BIOS other than automatic, but it's set at 0 times. Processor cache, we are at 40 like we wanted it to be. 55s on the base. The individual core 1 and 6 are at 58 where we wanted. All of the other cores are at 47. We did not bump up the temperatures to 90 like we did. That's something we didn't do in the BIOS to set the cutoff temperatures at 90. They're going to cut off at 70. So we can maybe go back in there and fish that back out. But we are almost where we were with the one click, with the exception that we won't run quite as hot. It's going to start to throttle. So let's check our benchmark. Go back to our single view because we like the way that looks. Let's run this benchmark and see if we improved over the base. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Well, we went from 14,171 to 14,611. It can do better than that. We might go back and look in the BIOS to set the cutoff temperature. The silicone's good for 105, it says. I believe that's what it comes up in the system at 105 degrees C. Obviously, 70 is way down there. We can probably bump it up to 90 and be okay before we start the throttle. We are liquid cooled with a massive system, so I think we could probably do that. Well, just to be on the safe side, we're back in the BIOS, and I think I'm going to change the CPU thermal junction max to what Intel says it is rather than trusting it, because if I look over here to the side, it says support for TJ Maxx in the range of 62 to 115. Well, I wouldn't want it to go above that somehow, so I'm just going to go ahead and set it back to 105. Now, we saw it at 105 in our system, but we're going to label that. But we did take off the thermal velocity boost. It is recommended to come off for overclocking, but we're going to limit the CPU to 105, and we want to make darn sure we are limiting that at 105 to the maximum spec. We can come back and put it at 100 to make sure that we, clip it off before we get to that 105 that the spec says for the Core Ultra 9. Alrighty, we're wrapping up the 10 minutes. We've already passed 10 minutes, obviously, because we have no time up here in this Cinebench 2024. We've been running that. We'll see how it finishes up on our BIOS settings. We're not quite as fast as we are with the boost, I don't think, but we're close. We finished up at 2482 instead of 2536. We have some thermal limits that we did not take off in the BIOS. We just pretty well much got it the same way, and we could have pushed it a little further in other ways. But we look at what our highest temperature was. It's still that one core 22. I don't know why this one runs so hot. It's the only hot one I got. I could go in there, maybe knock the undervolt down a little bit for that one group of 4, but you see the rest of them, the whole thing at peak during that 10 minutes, the whole peak didn't exceed that one core was the hottest at 88. Okay, so that probably throttled that core a couple of times during the 10 minutes. But you see the rest of them, very, very respectable temperatures. Now, this is a program I recommend you look into if you don't have one. Of course, if you get, what was that, you catch something from your interweb out there just walking around, not knowing where you're getting your programs from. But core temp is very commonly used amongst people. And this happens just to be the version that I have running, and it's done a pretty good job of tracking over the 10 minutes and how quickly the system recovers. Obviously, how quickly this water-cooled system recovers. There's nothing I have that can hit that processor any harder on all 24 cores than Cinebench. So I think we've done a pretty good job. I'm going to wrap this up. We could tweak some more, and remember that this is not a how-to by any means. It's just went through here and translated as much of the base information over. We're not running a fixed offset voltage. All the cores are multiple, and I probably ought to go in there and do something with that, but I think I've spent enough time in the video for it to just knock it off right here. So we appreciate you watching, and remember, you're on your own. This isn't a how-to. It just wanted to show you a little bit of poking around in the BIOS and finding some things and setting those ratios up, explain a little bit about how many active cores are doing what, because you can turn some off, and you can turn them and keep them from turning themselves off so that they're just always running a little bit. I just don't see the point of that. But anyway, just some basics. That's it. We'll see you. To see if we in fact did drop. We have plus 15 on the first two cores, the sets of cores. Down here on the bottom two, we were having a little bit of heatus going on down here, and we dropped those down to 20 millivolts below. Next thing we would have to do is run to see what we got going on. Well, we're definitely going to have to trim some of this stuff out. What we've got going on right now is in the pass 5, after we've done a plus 10 millivolts to all P cores, a 15 to the top two 0 and 1 of the E cores, and a minus 20 millivolts on clusters 2 and 3. And we should see what we get at the end of this run, what we've got. But now I want you to look at, I'm still having my one core, number 22 is still the hottest one. It may just be part of the silicone, the way this particular piece of silicone is. But look at our cores. We're not throwing any yellows up here. This would have been there. This is still more than 20 degrees C from the thermal temperature of the silicone itself. So we finished up another one here at 25.23. We had a previous run at 25.44. We could probably rerun these and they'd bounce around that level. I think we've done about as much as we can do for right now. Again, this is not a how-to, just walking you through it.